Hello everyone and welcome back to Tech with NK. In today's video, I'm going to propose a solution to the exercise Cs50 Certificate from Cs50's Introduction to Programming with Python. I'm going to show you one way you can solve this, and my aim is just to give you a few tips or hints that you can use while solving the exercise by yourself. So that said, let's look at the exercise and see what's expected from us. So from this exercise, in a file called shirtificate.py, we're expected to implement a program that prompts the user for their name and outputs using FPDF2 or Cs50 certificate in a file called shirtificate.pdf, similar to this one for John Harvard with these specifications. So this is the one they're talking about. You can see it has a title, Cs50 Certificate. It has a shirt and the name John Harvard took Cs50. And so what are the specifications? We're expected first of all for the orientation of this PDF to be in portrait mode and not in landscape, as we can see here. And the format of the PDF should be an A4 format, which is 210 millimeters wide by 297 millimeters tall. And the top of the PDF should say Cs50 Certificate as text centered horizontally. The shirt's image should be centered horizontally as well, and the user's name should be on top of the shirt in white text, as we can see right here. And we are welcome to even use borders, colors, and lines. All the details are left to us. And the certificate must not match this as we see here. We could modify it a little bit if we want to. But before going ahead to write the code, we are recommended to look at FPDF's 2 tutorial to learn how to use it, and look at the API also to get a few ideas from it. And no need to submit any PDFs with your code, but if you would like, you're welcome to, but not expected to share a certificate with your name on it in Cs50's communities. And we're going to come back to this tutorial, but for now, let's just look at the hints that have been given to us. The first is we can install FPDF2 like this with a simple pip install. And in this other hint, all they're telling us is that we can create our own class and make it inherit the methods from FPDF2. And also, we can disable automatic page breaks using the function set_auto_page_break. Here we are told that a cell's height can be made negative to move it upward, and we can open shirtificate.pdf once outputted by clicking it in VS Code's File Explorer. And this should work if you run this on Cs50's code interface. That's if you sign in with your GitHub and do all of that procedure. But if you're running this locally on your computer, you have to install an extension to help you open PDFs in VS Code. And if we keep scrolling down here, we have been given a demo, but there's nothing really much in this. All we can see is that when the code is run, that's Python of shirtificate.py, the user is prompted to enter an input, and we enter the user's name, and that's it. However, we can see the output of this name right here in this image. And if we keep going down, then as usual, we are expected to create a folder, we call it certificate, set it into that directory, and then in that same directory, download the image shirtificate.png. This is a link. And after that, create the file shirtificate.py, which is going to contain our code. Next, we're going to test it before submitting using submit 50. So that's about it for this exercise. However, before going to VS Code, I'd like us to look a little bit at this tutorial right here. I've already opened the link above here, and we're just going to skip to it. And this is where the link takes us to. There are a number of examples of how to use FPDF2, but we're just going to stick with this first one, the minimal example, because we're not really doing a lot with FPDF2 for this exercise. And so looking at this minimal example, the first thing as usual is we need to import FPDF. So from FPDF, import FPDF in uppercase. Then next, what we need to do as always, since we're working with classes, is we need to create an object of the class. This object was called PDF. You just assign it to FPDF in uppercase, open and close parentheses. Then next, we need to add a page to that PDF. And this is done using the method add_page. However, this returns a blank page in our PDF. So in case we want to add some text to it, the method to use is this one cell. As we can see in this line of code, pdf.cell 4010 hello world, this is a phrase we're trying to add, or the text we're trying to add. But before running this line of code pdf.cell, it is required from us to add a font type first, because we can't add text without setting the font. So we need to use a set font function to set the font. In this case, it was set to Helvetica, bold, and the font size 16. Then you can add the text you want, and after you can save your PDF in a specific path using the function pdf.output, and this is a specified path here, tutor1.pdf. Pretty much saving your PDF in the same working directory. And all of this is explained below here. And here we are told that by default, our PDF comes in A4 format and in portrait mode, which means we're just going to create our object like we saw here without modifying anything to follow the requirements from the exercise. And as we keep scrolling through, all this is the same as what I just explained earlier, but I want us to look at this other example here, that we see that we can run pdf.cell like this, and also there are many more parameters that we could add. And in this case, it says if we want to add a new cell, make it centered, and then go to the next line, we need to add these other parameters. First, new underscore x, set it to L margin, that's to move to the left side of the page. New underscore y, set to next, meaning I'm guessing to move to the next line, and then use the parameter align to center our text. And this is almost all what we need to solve this exercise. The only additional factor is to add an image, but if we scroll here, we see that to add an image, all we need to use is the image function, which we can see here. The code is as easy as the former ones. And so we're just going to leave this as it is here, and then we're going to continue the program. And with this, I think we have all the tools to solve this exercise. And we're just going to continue with this video in VS Code. And this is what my working directory looks like. For the sake of this video, I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to solve this exercise in a Python file. What I'm going to use is a Jupyter notebook. I'm doing this because I feel like it will be easier to explain using a Jupyter notebook. If you're not familiar with Jupyter notebooks, or you do not have the extension already added to your VS Code, I'm going to leave a video in the description of this video to help you do that, because it's not complicated. So looking at these code cells, in this first code cell, all we are doing is we are importing FPDF from FPDF, and I'm going to run this code cell, and this runs successfully because I already have FPDF installed. But if you do not, then open up your terminal and run pip install FPDF2, and that should solve it for you. And now in this other code cell, what I want to do is first we're going to create an object. Next, we're going to add a page to that object, and after that we're going to save that object, just to show you what the PDF looks like at this point. And this is the reason why I'm using the Jupyter notebook to solve this exercise, because I want to be able to show you the output of our code at every step. So starting here, I'm going to remove these three dots. We're going to call our object PDF like we saw online, and all we need to do is to call FPDF, and that's it to create the object. And next, we want to add a page to this PDF, and as we saw online, all we need to run is pdf.add underscore page, and we just open and close parentheses. This should do to add a page. And after this, I'm going to save this PDF just to show you what this looks like. So that'll be pdf.output. I'm going to save this in this current directory, and I'm just going to call this shirtificate.pdf. So if I run this code cell, this runs successfully, which means we should have a PDF in that directory. And if you take a look at this PDF, we can see that the PDF is currently blank. It's a one-page PDF, as we see here, 1 of 1, and it's blank. There's nothing in it here. So we're going to go back to our Jupyter notebook, and we're going to start adding a little bit of content to this PDF, which is what I want to do in this other code cell. We're going to add text to our PDF. So like we did before, we're going to create the object PDF. We'll set it to FPDF, and I'm going to open and close parentheses. We're going to add a page to this PDF. So pdf.add underscore page. I'm going to open and close parentheses, which is enough for that. And with this, we can skip to this other part of the code where we want to set the text font and then add text to our PDF. And like we saw online, all we need to do is call pdf.set_font, and we're going to choose a font. I'm just going to use the same one like we saw online, that will be Helvetica. And as we can see here, VS Code is trying to help us out with the parameters. It tells us that the first one should be the family, which we just included as Helvetica. So the next parameter we're going to add is, we're going to just put this in bold text. This should be an uppercase B to make this bold. And VS Code is telling us that there are a number of ways that we could format this. We could use the uppercase B for bold, I for italic, and U for underline. But I'm just going to leave this as bold, and I'm going to use a size font of, let's say, 30. And this should do to set the font. And now we want to add our text, and we saw that the method for this is called cell. So pdf.cell, and the first parameter is called W. So I'm going to use this. And VS Code tells us that the type of this parameter is a float, and it sets the cell width. And it gives us a little trick here, because if we set this to 0, then we're going to extend the width all throughout to the right margin, meaning that the text is going to occupy all of the current line, which is what we want to do to be able to center our text. So I'm going to set this W to 0. The next parameter is H, and this sets the cell height. Let's say we take a height of 20. The next parameter we're going to set is text, which is the text we want to enter. And as we saw online, this should be Cs50 let me remove this, Shirtificate. And I'm going to use the new_x and new_y parameters we saw online, because I want to move to the next line and start back in the next margin. So I'll call new_x, and I'm going to set this to L margin as we saw online. And I'm also going to call new_y, and I'm going to set this to next. And the last parameter that we need to set is align, and we're going to set this to an uppercase C. This should align our text. And this should do to add our title Cs50 Shirtificate. And I'm going to save this at the end here with a simple pdf.output, and we're going to save it to the same file location we just used above here. That will be shirtificate.pdf, as we just did before. And I'm going to run this code cell, and we have a little error here. It says FPDF has no attribute out. Oh, I didn't complete this. So this should be output. If I save this and then I run it again, we see the code ran successfully. So let's look at our PDF to see if anything has changed. And just as we expected, we have our title Cs50 Shirtificate. But then that's the only thing we have in our PDF. So we're going to go back to our Jupyter notebook, and the next thing we want to do is we want to add an image to this PDF. I already went ahead and added the first few lines of code, which is to create the object, add a page, set the font, and add the text Cs50 Shirtificate, as we just saw above here. And all we're going to add to this cell is just the code to add an image. And as you can see here, I've already downloaded my image, shirtificate.png. This is what it looks like, a blank image. If you've not downloaded it yet, I'll advise you to do so. But coming back here, we're going to modify this code cell. So I'm going to remove these 3 dots. And as we saw online, the function to add an image is literally called image. So to call this function, we're going to run pdf.image, and we're going to add a number of parameters to it. And in this case too, VS Code is helping us out. It tells us that the first thing we need to enter is a stir for the image, which contains the path to the image we're trying to access. And this image is saved in my current directory. So all I need to do here is just to add the name of the image, which will be shirtificate.png. And Jupyter Notebook is still helping me in this case. And aside of that parameter, another parameter we could add is called X, which indicates the horizontal position where to put the image. For this case, we know that our image needs to be centered, and the trick to do that is to set X to an uppercase C, which is going to center the image. And we also have another parameter called Y, and this indicates the vertical position where to place the image. Remember that we already placed our text at a position of 20, and so we need to use a value greater than 20 to set our image below our text. So for this case, let's say we set our image to 70, and we can also modify the size of our image with the parameter W. However, let me just remove this parameter for now, and save this and show you what shirtificate.pdf looks like. As we can see, our image has been added, but in this case we see that the image is quite big, and so it just fills the whole PDF. So we're going to come back here and we're going to modify the size of the image like I just said. We're going to use the parameter W, and let's say we set it to 180. I'm going to run this one more time, and if we come back here, we see that now the shirt looks a little bit smaller. There's quite a lot of space in between the CS50 certificate and the shirt. Well, one reason for that is because I've zoomed in on my screen, but let's say we zoom out here and see a little bit what happens, and let's zoom out again and again. And I think I like it better like this, zoomed in this way. And I think I'm going to just leave this gap as it is. The space looks a little bit big, but feel free to reduce it or increase it. Remember, we're told in the exercise that our PDF must not match exactly what we saw online, so we can increase it or reduce it. I guess we can modify it as much as we please. But we're going to come back here and we are done with our image. And now the last thing but not the least is to want to add text on our image. And like before, we have our object, we've created our object, we've added a page to it, we've added the fonts, we've added the title, and we've added the image. So what we want to do here is just to write the code to add the text to the image. So I'm going to remove this, and I believe you already have a few ideas on how to do this since we already added text for our title, and if you do, you're right, because we're still going to use the set font and the cell functions. But we're going to use one more function for this particular text. Remember, we're told that our text has to be in white color, and as you can see here, by default the text is black, so we need to modify the color for the text. And to do that, we're going to use the method set_text_color, and this will look like pdf.set_text_color, which is this one. And we're going to set this parameters to 255, 255, 255, which is white in RGB. And this should help us make our text white. And if we're satisfied with this, what we need to do next is to set the font. So pdf.set_font, and we're going to use the same font we just used earlier. Let's say what, Helvetica. Let's say we make our text bold as well, so an uppercase B, and let's use a size of probably 20, because we don't want our text to be as big as our title. Feel free to use a smaller value if you want to, and I'm going to run pdf.cell to add the last line of text. And remember, if we want to centralize this text, we're going to set W to 0. Let's say we set Y to what value? As you already recall, we want to use a value greater than 70. So let's try with a value, let's say 150, comma. We're going to set our text, and according to the exercise, we're supposed to get input from the user. They need to enter their name, and we are supposed to use that name for this line of text. But just to show you how this works, I'm just going to enter a default name here. Let's say NK Harvard took CS50, and we are going to set the align parameter to an uppercase C. And last but not the least, we want to save our PDF. So if I run this code cell, we had an error says FPDF got an unexpected keyword Y. Oh, I see. The keyword here is not Y, it's supposed to be H. Sorry about that. Let me run this code cell again. And this time around it did work. So let's look at our PDF to see what happened. And we have CS50 certificate, we have our shirt, and we have our name, NK Harvard took CS50. And this almost looks like what we expected, but as you can already tell, this name is a little bit too close to the color of the shirt. So let's come back here and let's modify this value. Instead of 150, let's say maybe we'll work with 180. And let me run this one more time and come back to our PDF. Let me scroll through this. And now the name looks a little bit better. We have NK Harvard took CS50. The distance here looks good, and the distance here looks good as well. And if you've just seen, this is pretty much all we need to do to solve this exercise. These lines of code here are good enough to do the job. However, it's not complete because we need to write our code in a Python file and not a Jupyter notebook, and we need to get input from the user and then use the user's name to write on top of the shirt, which is what I did in this Python file here, shirtificate.py. I'm just going to share the file with you here. It's the same code like we just saw, so I'm just going to run through it real quickly. The first thing we need to do, as usual, we import FPDF from FPDF. Here we get input from the user using the input function. We passed a little string to it to tell the user to enter the name. And then I created the object PDF from FPDF, added a page to it, and set the auto break parameter to false like we saw in one of the hints online. And after this, I added a header as we just did before using the set font and cell functions. And in this other code line, I added an image to the PDF. And after that, I added text on top of the image using set underscore text underscore color to modify the color, set underscore font to set the font, and set underscore cell to add the text. And at the end of the code, save the image as shirtificate.pdf. So let me open up my terminal and let's run python of shirtificate.py. It should be .py and not the Jupyter notebook, so let me remove that .py. And we've been prompted to enter a name. Let's say our name is what? NK Harvard, not Harvard, let's say Yale. And I press enter. And now let's look at the certificate PDF. Let me close this terminal, and as we can see, NK Yale took CS50. So this tells us that this file certificate.py works just fine. However, before I end this video, I'm going to show you one more Python file, which is this one. I just called it shirtificate2.py. Recall that among the hints, we were told that we could create our own class and make it inherit from FPDF, and then add functionality to this class to make it behave the way we want to. So if you're curious about what that should look like, this is a file to help guide you. That's the first thing you need to do is to import FPDF as usual. And I decided to call this class certificate, and to make it inherit from FPDF, in parentheses, I just passed the parameter FPDF. And this class has a few functions. It has its init function, it has a header function, it has an add shirt function, and it has an add name function. And at the end, I created a main function, and I just called the individual functions of this class. I'm going to leave links in the description of this video to these files in case you want to open it up and see the way it works. And if you do and you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be more than pleased to answer you. And that's it, we've come to the end of our video. If you did enjoy the video, do well to hit the like and subscribe button so as to support the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in my upcoming videos. Have a good day.